Falok as a good friend. So he's going to be speaking pro-communism, okay? And that's why the emphasis on the word used to think. Anyway, I'll just do him a small courtesy. Please feel free to have. Okay. I'm sorry. Did I say free? I guess you guys don't understand the meaning of the term, right? We can start off the debate by thanking a political system like democracy which allows us to have such a debate.
Are you living in this illusion where democracy is saying that you can have all the freedom that you want, but the freedom is absolutely restricted?
I'm actually living in a dream. You guys wake up screaming at night. Those are nightmares.
Can some basic facts rather digging at each other? What is good and what is bad? This is just
I thought you guys are good at hiding facts.
Hiding facts like so many people being killed all over the world in the name of oil politics that you people are doing?
See, I do agree.
Hiding facts in the sense that in the name of democracy you kill tribal people in India?
See, I do agree democracy offers a choice to everyone to become a murderer. Communism, on the other hand, offers mass murderers a choice.
We have always thought of bringing about paradigmatic shifts in the world. We are not restricting ourselves to a few nations. This is a creation of a new society, a consciousness that we are thinking of changing. Revolution demands blood, and some blood is going to be spilled. Better if it gets spilled of the capitalists.
What demands revolution though?
Change?
That is pretty much happening even without revolution.
Like?
Revolution, in fact, I would suggest revolution is not so much change as it's a lack of ability to understand change.
In the sense?
Look at what happened with, let's say, Soviet Russia.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't able to deal with the upcoming changes of the 20th century. Hence revolt. Communism is anti a lot of things. What is it pro?
It is pro-democracy. Not the kind of democracy that you would want to live though. The kind of democracy which doesn't allow rights. The kind of democracy which doesn't give justice. The kind of democracy which in the terms of Marx is a bourgeois sham. And that kind of a democracy we don't accept.
So you're basically saying a system based on equality.
Yes.
Okay, a system which is absolutely where everyone is equal.
Yes.
And yet one guy decides to prescribe this method and you still call him an equal?
Absolutely.
So you're basically saying the doctor and the patient are exactly the same.
No, he is not a doctor and we are not the patients. This is a system, and in the process of the system, people get a part of it. You see, there are two methods of Marxism. First is where there is theory, and second is practice.
I think it stops pretty much at the theory. And even Marx agreed that.
No, not really.
The practice has been most of the 20th century.
Yeah.
And that's why I said it stops at the theory. It's a beautiful theory, sculpture, meant to be decorated, worshipped, and kept at that.
We are speaking at the wrong place, you see. Precisely because the auditorium where we are sitting is the creation of a capitalist world. And for the precise reason we are sitting and chatting here, this gives us the precise illusion that we are living in a free world. What is your idea of freedom?
Mainly the opportunity to have such a chat.
That's it?
I mean, and not having the threat of, being shot when I leave.
No communist leader would kill you for speaking what you want to.
Of course, if it's what he wants to, then of course not.
Acha, what is the idea of democracy? And what is the idea of freedom in capitalism?
See, I mean, in India especially, the Communist Party in India okay, needs the democratic process to vote them in. Okay, so, I mean, it's kind of circular reasoning, don't you think? That please vote for us, we are communists.
So,
So, to come to power, you need a system which is anathema to your own system.
no, it's not. It's simple. It's something like this. To bring about any social churning can't happen in one day. We are not Naxalites, you see. Being Naxalite would argue that the entire South Asia is on the brink of a revolution and we just click one domino, it affects all over the world.
That's the exact same.
We are thinking of a change which would be bring about slow and steady. We don't want to burn down the structures as you think we want to do it. We are going slowly and steadily. Democracy is just a stepping stone. Your kind of democracy. Understand one thing, Sagar Bhavu. Because he's my comrade. You see, democracy doesn't allow comrades. But even for us, capitalism is not an evil. It is not something wrong. It is not something bad. The after effects of it is what the problem is. We are not anti-technology as people think we are. The only difference is the technology for whom, the technology for what. Is this the kind of technology where we would have 99% of the world driven in poverty? Is this the kind of system which allows only and only a few select few holding all the monopoly of all the resources? We want to ease it out. We want to spread it all over the world. We want a system where not only income-based equality, but a social equality is needed. When we talk about India, sorry, last
Yeah,
point.
please, no problem.
Yeah, democracy. But in India, at least, this is not only income equality, but this is also social equality. This is where caste would collapse. This is where class would collapse. Structures ultimately need to collapse. You need not burn them down.
I mean, what you quoted just now is theory. There'll be one where this has actually been practiced, one system where this has actually succeeded. Because while this theory sounds absolutely beautiful and enchanting on paper, it's on the assumption that humanity or all human beings are born equal. I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. Because one guy thought about this idea. He obviously wasn't equal to the rest, right? The rest couldn't think about it. So the assumption that everyone is born absolutely equal, and I'm not talking about privileges in terms of society, I'm talking about a lot of other things, including, I mean, differences in intellectual levels, for example. So the assumption that everybody has to be exactly the same, because being unique in any way threatens the whole system. It means then you're classified as bourgeois, then you're classified as capitalist. Would mean that the systems which you're talking about gently easing from picture would then need to be burned down. That has pretty much been the story of the last century, where communist systems, socialist systems have done their best to destroy the structures, okay, because they felt them as a threat, and they were right in that sense. Okay,
But
knowledge
you are
or
shifting
wisdom.
to my side.
No, I'm saying knowledge or wisdom is a threat to communism. And I would not like to live in a society where, I mean, it's one thing saying people are equal, but it should not be everyone is equally dumb.
Does equality mean sameness? The answer to this is no. Equality, what is the basis of this equality? You see, it's as simple as that. The thought, at least we have a thought, capitalism doesn't have a thought. But, and there is a possibility of some change in the thought. But oh, sorry, there is something called a social responsibility of corporate sector. I forgot that. But through NGOs, where you give a few clothes here and there to poor people, but that is besides the point. The point is that what is this world that we are thinking about? Try to, Sagar, the point really is this, that I'm not, let us for a moment, let me think that capitalism as a system, forget communism, is the end of communism in 1991, let us assume that. Would we still, with the system that we have, wouldn't you want to live in a system where there is egalitarian society, I'm not saying equal society, where justice would be provided? If yes, if capitalism allows certain morality, if yes, then will the system perpetrate such kind of equality?
Why do you think capitalism doesn't allow egalitarianism?
How?
No, I'm asking you, that's my point. I mean, why do you think it doesn't allow?
Because the world that I'm living in right now, the wars that are happening out there, what is happening in Gaza, what is happening in Thailand, what is happening all over the world, is a part of this global system which does not allow peace. I agree to the fact that during the Cold War era there were wars. I agree to the fact that there was a conflict. But you have to understand a simple point. The simple point is this, that with the collapse of Soviet Union in 1991, unfortunately, the thought has not evaporated. The country collapsed. The basis of Marxism is not whether a country rises or falls. Ultimately, a society where even nation states won't exist. Not a kind of nation state not existing that you want, where there would be free trade.
The unfortunate part about the 1991 collapse, it's not that the Soviet Union collapsing was unfortunate. Unfortunate part was a thought not evaporating. I mean, 50 years of experienced failure. Okay, fighting proxy wars because the whole idea was anti-capitalist or anti-US. That thought not evaporating is what Russia is dealing with. I mean, if you look at the aftermath of the Cold War, I'm pretty sure you would agree with me that living in Washington DC would be far more a better choice as living in Moscow.
Okay, then would it be so good as, fair enough, living in Moscow is not as good as living in Washington.
Because in Moscow you can be damn sure that your nuclear missiles would take off, but you can't be sure whether you, on the tap, you get running water.
Absolutely. Now tell me something. I hope you have heard about this country called Grenada, which is in Caribbean. What happens in Grenada? For 30 years, these people, poor people from Caribbean islands, are fighting against a dictator. A dictator which is imposed there by the United States. At the end of which, after protracted civil war for 30 years, they at last managed to have a government, communist, but a government that the people of that country wanted. About 500,000 people wanted that particular government. One fine night, Marine Corps of United States decides that no, communism is coming too close to us. They invade the country with 5,000 soldiers. End of that country. Have you been hearing of this particular country ever in your life?
See, capitalism doesn't allow for mistakes, as I said at the start of the class.
Right.
It does allow for mistakes. You have to be smart enough not to make them. Communism, in fact, on the other hand, is a mistake itself. So there's no question about that. I mean, you're talking about countries in the Caribbean, okay, which Cuba could be another example. I mean, I'm giving respect to what you're saying. Cuba could be another example. The point is, the Soviet Union, nobody invaded them. They messed it up pretty much on their own.
Yeah, agree, absolutely.
I mean, they didn't need the American Marines to actually invade and replace anyone.
Sure.
Everyone whom they got, every successor with the Politburo, kind of tried to outdo his predecessor. So, the whole idea that masses, okay, egalitarianism, it's a nice thought that social responsibility, everyone has equal rights, or at least the opportunity to equal rights. But the whole idea that masses can be culled and can be culled into thinking what a handful of people in the Politburo think. Don't you agree that's capitalism for some?
It is, I agree totally, but why do we always have to equate a particular thought with a particular functioning of a country?
Now, because pretty much all the ideals or icons of the communist world in the last 50 years have been mass murderers. So, I mean, I'm straining my head. I mean, I can think about maybe EMS Namboodiripad of Kerala, and he talked a lot.
But he didn't kill anyone.
Yeah, but he didn't do anything else also. I mean, so, I mean, if that's going to be our definition of morality, that okay, this guy didn't kill someone, so let's, lift him on the pedestal because he spoke the right things.
What are the right things?
No, I mean, right things in the sense of what you just mentioned, egalitarianism, equal rights, equal responsibility for everyone. Do you really think everybody is ready enough to handle equal responsibility?
Have you allowed it to happen?
Isn't that a myth though?
No, it's not.
Communism has allowed it to happen, right? He's tried to allow it to happen and it's been a fiasco.
It never reached its logical conclusion. Try to understand this. The entire philosophy, idea, thought of Marxism and communism is based upon certain logic, which capitalism doesn't have. Capitalism is absolutely illogical and irrational.
That's because it's based on nature. I mean, you have the inherent nature of survival of the fittest law, which doesn't allow for egalitarianism. I mean,
which is good.
It is pretty
which type of a society? Again, I'm coming to the same point, Sagar. Which kind of a society would we want to live? A handful of people holding all the monopoly, or a few people, or a large amount of people having what they need?
A handful of people holding on to monopoly, if they actually are able to do that, as against, and if they are also having the potential to be replaced, which a democracy allows. Now, a communist system, you're on the assumption that the party is going to be absolutely incorruptible. And if it is corruptible, and it is also, I mean, history has shown most people turn out to be
Agreed.
on the side of the law. There's no way of changing the system. So, I mean, if you have a system which is flawed, and capitalism is flawed, I'm not saying it's an absolute science, it's a flawed system, but the nature is flawed. Darwin's law explains nature. It's not saying it's a just system. There is no egalitarianism nature. True, you can aspire towards a society which is better than nature.
Absolutely. Now the question is that if we can aspire at least to reach a society where all will get their rights and privileges as they demand it to be. My argument is, or the Marxist argument is, that capitalism as a system does not allow it inherently within it. For the simple reason that the very fact that capitalism functions is upon a primary idea, and that idea is upon spreading. It doesn't care how many people it kills, it doesn't care to what extent it spread, because its survival is dependent upon constant expansion. And that process of constant expansion, tribals being killed, Adivasis being killed, Dalits being killed, blacks being killed, or they being left out. Let's take an example, Narmada dam project that is happening to our great Modi Sarkar. What is happening there? For the past 10 to 15 years, people have lost their homes, they've lost their livelihood. The question is that no capitalist ever thinks of what would they live. It's as simple as this, Sagar. That I am living somewhere, I've been living in this particular land for about 50, 60, 70, 100, 200 years. I have an attachment to that particular land. My generations have been living to that land. I have no other means of working except agriculture. That is all that I can do. And after which, there is one particular developmental model where they want to create a dam. A dam for what? A dam for a particular industry because they need water? In the process, you force, you throw away thousands of people out of their lands which have been living for hundreds of years, and you can give them a petty 5-6 lakhs. And then is this the capitalist responsibility that we gave them compensatory packages? What would they do with those packages? 5 lakh rupees, they come to a city. They have no skill with them, they have no education with them, and they turn into these migrants with the same capitalist system is not even ready to incorporate. They live constantly on the market.
I completely agree with your point that 5 lakh rupees might not be adequate compensation, but that's, I think, pretty much what Stalin also agreed with. He didn't compensate anyone at all, he just sent them to the gulags. So, you want land, okay, and it's a convenient excuse to hide, right? Because when, let's say, the government which is, let's say, pro-capitalist or democratic, when a government which is pro-democratic actually decides to, usurp land, as you call it, with compensation, so I don't know how it works, usurping someone's land but paying them for the same. Anyway, that is deemed unlawful, but communism hides behind the excuse that land, I mean, there's no land at all, right? You're talking about the Adivasi's land, there is no private property, so what are you so attached to? So, it's state land, right? The state can do pretty much whatever the hell it wants with it. I mean, what happened with Chechnya? Okay, why don't we talk a little bit about what happened with Chechnya? The Chechnyans did not decide to migrate. Stalin kind of convinced them to migrate. And now they're back. So now it's a problem with the communist setup.
Yeah, the similar way Palestinians were not asked to move outside the land. They were just...
The United States was... the United States was against the idea of a state of Israel forming in the first place. So
the Balfour Declaration says the same thing? 1919? History, sorry.
When you're talking about usurping land, like you mentioned, the case of Palestine or Israel, I mean, that was not just a Jewish problem, it was a world problem. The Holocaust was not something which the Jews had asked for. I'm not trying to defend the Jewish action, but the Holocaust was something which was an aftermath.
And Holocaust was done again by communists.
No, it wasn't done by capitalists either.
Good things about capitalism.
It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hence communism.
Yeah. suicides, I'm sorry. Suffocation हो जाता है.
And the mad rush behind money, desperate urge to expand, imperialism. I mean, you've got to be kidding me.
I know. I'll tell you one simple story since you called, since we have 2 more minutes. ये खत्म हो गया मैं अगर time pass कर रहे हैं. Is Stalin, he wanted to save on the bullets. So both resources are important. Why to waste so many bullets? 10,000 people to kill. अभी करेंगे क्या? So he used to ask 10 people to stand behind each other and shoot only 1 bullet. तो 3 लोग मरते थे, बाजू कर जाओ. आगे वाला जो दूसरा बुलेट बाजू कर जाओ. But even this is good. At least he's thinking of resources. Holocaust didn't even think of that, or for that matter, capitalism.
So are you saying I should expect something in the lobby when I leave?
Sorry.
Or, I mean, should I as a precaution be the third person to leave? 2 in front?
Nothing shall happen because, as you say, communism is dead now, unfortunately, in India. So nothing shall happen. You will be showered with these lights.
But as you say, unfortunately, thought still lives on.
The thought will kill you, not the people.
Mao Zedong famously said, "Power comes from the barrel of a gun."
Yeah. Mao also said this in 1949 that this we are doing. Mao also said in 1949 that why people, Mao once said that it will take about 1,000 years for communism to come to China. So people think this is crazy. I said this is crazy. It's as simple as this. If the French Revolution which happened in 1789, am I right? In 1789, the French Revolution that happened, if its ideals are still not true in 1949, it will take quite some time for communism to come.
Or it could also mean that revolution is a bad idea.
Not really. It would also mean that revolution is the demand of the time. Anyway, I think we'll go to the closing remarks. Yeah.
No, I'm pretty much done because I allow for different thoughts. So I'm open enough to.
No, I think the last point I could say, I think this debate itself is redundant after a point. Because there is no pro and con that is left anymore. The Marxism that we were fighting upon or debating upon was an old orthodox Marxism that is lost many years ago. In the past 20-30 odd years, that Marx के time का Marxism अभी बचा ही नहीं है कुछ. What is needed now is a sort of a change in the not only theory but also practice as well. It is not about shunning capitalism. It is about using it responsibly. It is about invoking the idea where capitalism would ultimately reach its logical end and not its forcing its end into something different. This is not about destroying that structure of capitalism. If we can envision a world where capitalism, despite its inherent nature of expanding, if it could be more responsible to the people outside, if we can envision the world where the state shall take the responsibility, not individual capitalists. Capitalism shall exist, but the state shall take responsibility of the capitalist expansion. Then we can envision a welfare state, a Nehruvian model, for example, and a welfare state where more and more amount of development of the society would be possible. Ultimately, our job in this way or that way, except the debate and all that shit, is to think of how to make this world a better. Funny thing, Eric Hobsbawm, the last book that he wrote at the age of 96, he's done everything, he's like, die man, now die, 96. The last book that he writes is How to Change the World. I'm like, dude, what did you do for so many years? But ultimately that is what it boils down to. How do you change the world? That change is not the Obama type change. That change is not the Anna Hazare type change. The change that, for that matter, not Modi type change. But the change is the change where it will be more, a world would be a better place to live than what it is. Isn't it?
Well said.